Jessica kissed me goodbye that morning like she always did. Her suitcase already packed and waiting by the door, her phone buzzing with last-minute emails from work. "I'll be back Friday night," she said, brushing a hand over my cheek. "Don't forget to water the plants this time." I chuckled, nodding. Yeah. Safe flight." She gave me one last smile before grabbing her bag and walking out the door. I listened to the sound of her heels clicking against the pavement, the car door slamming, the engine starting. Then, silence. She was gone. Or at least, that's what I thought. For the past 3 years, Jessica's job had required frequent travel. Always the same routine. She'd pack, she'd leave, and we'd text or call at night when she was done with her meetings. I never questioned it. Why would I? She had always been responsible, organized, predictable. I trusted her. Until this trip. It started with something small. A feeling, an unease I couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was the way she had been acting lately, more distant, more secretive. Maybe it was how she hesitated before answering simple questions about her trip. Or maybe it was nothing at all, and I was just being paranoid. But then, an hour after she left, I got a text. "Hey, just boarded. Love you." I stared at the message for a long moment, something about it making my stomach tighten. Just boarded. But I hadn't heard the sound of a suitcase rolling across the pavement. I hadn't heard the Uber pull up like usual. And I hadn't heard the plane overhead, the one she should have been on. A strange thought flickered in my mind, one I immediately tried to push away. But it stuck. What if she never left? I grabbed my laptop, opening the airline website, my fingers moving before I could talk myself out of it. I searched for her flight, found the one she was supposed to be on, and my chest tightened as I checked the status. Delayed. Not just a few minutes, by 2 hours. I frowned, rereading her text. Just boarded. That was a lie. A stupid, unnecessary lie. Why would she say that? What was she trying to cover up? My heartbeat picked up, my mind racing, but I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she just assumed she'd be on time. Maybe. My phone buzzed again. Another lie. Landed safely. Exhausted already. My stomach twisted. The plane hadn't even taken off yet. I sat there, staring at the screen, the weight of realization pressing down on me. Something was wrong. Jessica wasn't where she said she was. And if she wasn't on that flight, where the hell was she? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm, to think logically. There had to be an explanation. Maybe she rescheduled. Maybe there was an emergency. Maybe I was about to find out something I didn't want to know. I pulled up the location tracking app we had on our phones. We had installed it years ago, mostly for safety reasons, never really needing to use it. My hands were shaking as I clicked on her name, waiting for the map to load. Then, I saw it. She was still in the city. Not at the airport. Not at a hotel. But in a residential neighborhood, just 10 miles away. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stared at the screen. My breathing sharp, unsteady. My wife, who was supposed to be in another state for work, was instead right here. Hiding. Lying. With someone. I clenched my jaw, my hands gripping the edges of the laptop so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mind flashed through every possibility, every scenario, but deep down, I already knew the truth. I just needed to see it for myself. I grabbed my keys. And I drove. I drove in silence, my grip tight on the steering wheel, my heartbeat loud in my ears. My mind was racing, replaying every moment, every detail I might have missed over the past few months. Had she always been lying? How many times had she told me she was flying out when she was really just a few miles away with someone else? I glanced at my phone, the map still open, her location unmoving. 10 miles. That's all that separated me from the truth. I didn't know what I'd find when I got there, but I knew one thing for certain. Jessica was hiding something, and I was about to rip it wide open. The closer I got to the address, the more my stomach twisted. It wasn't a hotel. It wasn't a business center. It was a house. A quiet, suburban home tucked away on a residential street. A place that looked so normal, so mundane. Yet it was the epicenter of whatever my wife had been keeping from me. I pulled up a block away, turning off the engine, my hands trembling as I stared at the house. Whose was it? Who was inside? And how long had this been going on? I exhaled sharply, forcing myself to breathe, forcing myself to stay calm. I needed to be smart. I couldn't just storm in. I scanned the area, watching, waiting. A few cars lined the driveway, none of them familiar. Lights were on inside, a faint glow leaking through the curtains. Then, movement. A shadow passed by the window. A man. My jaw clenched. I couldn't see his face, but I didn't need to. There was another man inside. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jessica. Long day, just getting settled in. I'll call you before bed. Love you. My stomach turned. She was still keeping up the lie. Even now, knowing she was sitting inside that house, knowing she wasn't miles away like she wanted me to believe, she was still pretending. It was insulting, infuriating, but it also told me something important. She had no idea I was onto her. I stepped out of the car, moving quickly, staying low. The adrenaline was making my hands shake, but I pushed forward, keeping to the shadows as I approached the house. I needed to see. I needed undeniable proof. I crept up to the side window, pressing myself against the wall, my breath shallow. Slowly, carefully, I tilted my head to look inside. And then I saw her. Jessica, sitting on a couch, a glass of wine in her hand, laughing, relaxed, comfortable, happy. She wasn't in a meeting. She wasn't exhausted from travel. She wasn't doing any of the things she told me she was doing. She was here, in this house, living a second life. And then I saw him. My blood turned ice cold. He walked into the room, casual, like he belonged there. He handed her something, a plate of food, like they were having dinner together in their own home, like this was their normal routine. He leaned down, kissed the top of her head, and she smiled up at him. Not forced, not guilty, just happy. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe, because I knew him. It was my brother. Everything inside me shattered at once. My vision blurred, my ears rang. My fingers curled into fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. My brother. My own blood. The man who had stood beside me at my wedding. The man who had called Jessica his sister-in-law. The man I had trusted with everything. He was the one she had been sneaking away to. He was the one she had built this secret life with. The realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't new. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This had been happening for a long time. I swallowed hard, my throat burning. I should have felt rage. I should have wanted to break down that door, to rip my brother apart, to scream at Jessica for everything she had done to me. But all I felt was cold, ice spreading through my veins, numbing me to everything except one singular thought. They thought they got away with it. I stepped back from the window, my heart pounding, my breath steadying as a different kind of clarity settled over me. This wasn't the time to explode. This wasn't the time for confrontation. Not yet. Because if they wanted to play games behind my back, then I was about to make sure they never saw what was coming. I turned, walking back to my car, my mind already racing with my next move. This wasn't just betrayal. This was war. I drove home in silence, my grip tight on the steering wheel, my mind running at a speed I had never felt before. The anger was there, burning hot beneath my skin, but it wasn't reckless. It was controlled, calculated. Jessica and my own brother. The betrayal wasn't just painful, it was humiliating. How long had they been laughing behind my back? How long had they been sneaking around, pretending, lying? My hands clenched around the wheel, my jaw tightening. They thought they were untouchable. That was their first mistake. Because now, they weren't just caught. They were trapped. I got home, sat down at the kitchen table and started making a list. Every lie, every excuse, every business trip that might not have been real. If she had been lying about this, who knew how deep it went? I pulled up our shared calendar, scrolling through the past year. 7 trips. 7 times she had been out of town for work. My stomach churned, my pulse hammering as I opened my bank account, checking past charges. Hotel stays. Restaurants I had never been to. Flowers. My breath came out slow, controlled, but my entire body was tight with rage. She wasn't just cheating. She was making a life with him. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. That would be too easy. Too merciful. They didn't deserve easy. They deserved to feel what I felt. The shock, the disbelief, the slow, crushing realization that their world was collapsing around them. I was going to ruin them the way they had ruined me. Step 1 was gathering evidence. Hard proof. Undeniable. I set up a fake email account, sent a message to Jessica's office HR department, casually asking about her last few business trips, saying I had some reimbursement concerns. They got back to me in less than an hour. Jessica hadn't traveled for work in over a year. I exhaled slowly, a bitter smirk pulling at my lips. There it was. The truth, staring me right in the face. Step 2 was setting the stage. If she was willing to go this far to keep her lies going, I needed to make sure when the truth came out, there was no way to spin it. No way to manipulate her way out. I needed her to destroy herself. I sent her a text. Miss you already. Call me when you're free. She responded almost immediately. I will, babe. Just getting settled in. I stared at the message, my blood running cold. Settled in? Settled in where, Jessica? Because I just saw you in another man's house. My stomach churned at the thought of her sitting next to my brother, reading my message, laughing about how easy it was to fool me. Step 3 was making sure they never saw it coming. I dug deeper, searching through everything. Her emails, her cloud backups, even the messages she had deleted from her phone. She was careful, but not careful enough. I found reservations under a different name. Bank transfers she had sent to an unknown account. Her entire affair was hidden in plain sight. And my brother? He wasn't any smarter. He had been sending money to a separate account too, but it wasn't to Jessica. It was to another woman. I froze, my eyes scanning the transaction history, my mind racing. Was he cheating on her, too? I clicked on the details, my breath catching in my throat. It wasn't just another woman. It was his fiancée. My brother had a whole other life. A woman who thought he was faithful, a woman he was planning to marry. Jessica wasn't just a mistress. She was getting played, too. A slow grin spread across my face. This was perfect. I had everything I needed. The emails, the proof, the receipts, the second betrayal that would destroy both of them. It was all lining up. And now, all I had to do was light the match. Step 4 was making the reveal public. I started drafting an email. Not to Jessica, not to my brother, to his fiancée. Subject, you need to see this. I attached the receipts, the messages, the proof. Every lie, every betrayal, every ugly truth they had been keeping from her. Then, at the last second, I added Jessica to the recipient list. I hit send. Then, I sat back, and I waited for the explosion. I sat back, phone in hand, watching the email send, knowing that by the time it hit their inboxes, their entire world would be imploding. I had done it. I had pulled the trigger. There was no taking it back now, not that I wanted to. Jessica and my brother had spent years lying, sneaking around, building something they thought was unbreakable. But the difference between them and me? I didn't build my revenge on lies. I built it on the truth. And the truth was a nuclear bomb. Now, all I had to do was watch it go off. It didn't take long. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed violently, notifications flooding in like a dam had burst. Jessica, my brother, his fiancée. And then, a number I didn't recognize, but I knew exactly who it belonged to. Her. The woman my brother had been planning to marry. The woman who had just received undeniable proof that the man she loved was a liar, a cheater, a fraud. I let it ring. Then again, and again. I smirked, setting my phone down, waiting for the next stage of the explosion to begin. Then, another text. This one from Jessica. What the hell did you do? I laughed. I actually laughed. What did I do? No, Jessica. What did you do? Before I could type a response, my phone rang again, this time from my brother. I stared at the screen, letting the call sit unanswered, watching as he tried again. I could picture him, pacing, panicked, running his hands through his hair, trying to piece together a way to save himself. There was no saving him. Then, another message. Nathan, we need to talk. Now. I picked up my glass, took a slow sip, exhaled, and finally replied. Nah, I think we're done talking. My doorbell rang. I turned my head slowly, already knowing who it was. Jessica. I stood, walked to the door, took my time unlocking it, and when I pulled it open, she was standing there, wild-eyed, furious, desperate. She shoved past me without waiting for permission, spinning to face me, her hands clenched into fists. "What the hell did you do?" she snapped, her voice shaking. I shut the door behind her, tilting my head. "I think a better question is what the hell did you do, Jessica? And for how long?" She flinched at the sharpness in my voice, her chest rising and falling like she was struggling to breathe. "You ruined everything," she whispered, eyes blazing. I smirked, crossing my arms. "No, you ruined everything. I just made sure everyone else knew about it." Her face twisted, and for a second, I saw something else in her expression, fear. She wasn't just angry. She was terrified. "Nathan, you don't understand," she started, her voice softer now, almost pleading. Stop," I cut in. "Just stop. I don't want to hear your excuses. I don't care about your reasons. I don't care how you justify it to yourself. The only thing that matters now is that the truth is out. You're exposed. And now, you get to live with the consequences." Her breathing hitched. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she whispered. I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh? What was it supposed to be like, Jessica? Were you waiting for the perfect moment to tell me? Planning on keeping up the lie forever? Or were you just hoping I'd never find out?" She clenched her jaw, looking away, and for the first time, I saw it. The guilt, the shame, the weight of what she had done finally crashing down on her. But it didn't matter. It was too late. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my brother. "Nathan, please, just talk to me." I exhaled, my grip tightening on the phone before I slid it into my pocket, my eyes never leaving Jessica. "You should go," I said, my voice calm, steady. She blinked, like she hadn't expected that. "What?" "You should go," I repeated, "because there's nothing left for you here. Nothing to fix. Nothing to save." Her lips parted, like she wanted to argue, like she wanted to fight, but the truth was staring her in the face now, undeniable, inescapable. She had lost. Finally, she swallowed hard, blinking rapidly, then turned and walked to the door. She hesitated for half a second, then opened it, stepping out into the night, her shoulders slumped, her head low. I watched her go, waited until she disappeared down the street. Then I shut the door, locked it, and leaned back against it, exhaling slowly. The war was over, and I had won. I stood there for a long moment, the house quiet, the echoes of Jessica's last steps fading into the night. My phone was still buzzing in my pocket, but I ignored it. I didn't need to hear what my brother had to say. There was nothing left to talk about. I had given them years of loyalty, trust, blind faith. They threw it away like it meant nothing. But now, they had nothing left, either. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a drink, and sat down at the table. The house felt different now. It wasn't empty. It was mine again. No more lies. No more betrayals lingering in the walls, poisoning the air. I took a slow sip, letting the whiskey burn down my throat, my mind already piecing together the next steps. I wasn't done yet. Jessica would try to salvage what was left. She would try to rewrite the story, spin the narrative to make herself look like the victim. I wasn't going to let that happen. I grabbed my laptop, opened it, and started typing. The divorce papers were already in motion. I made sure she got nothing. Not the house, not the savings, not even a scrap of my sympathy. She had lied, manipulated, and humiliated me. The least she could do was walk away with nothing. My brother, though, his punishment was just beginning. He thought losing his fiancée was bad. I was about to make sure he lost everything else, too. He had built his reputation on being the responsible one, the reliable one, the guy everyone could count on. I knew the truth now. I knew about the money he had been hiding, the sketchy deals he had made, the way he had manipulated everyone around him. I had receipts, and I had nothing to lose. I pulled up my contacts, found a familiar name, and hit send. If my brother wanted to play dirty, I'd show him what real destruction looked like. The message was simple. You should take a closer look at Logan's finances. A few minutes later, I got a reply. Consider it done. I sat back, exhaling slowly. It was over. Jessica was gone. Logan was about to lose everything. And me? I had nothing left tying me to this mess. No regrets. No second thoughts. Just freedom. A week later, the fallout was everywhere. Jessica had been calling, texting, begging for a conversation. I ignored every single message. Then came the mutual friends, the ones who still wanted to believe she was a good person. She made a mistake, man. Don't throw everything away over one bad decision. One bad decision? They had no idea. And Logan? He had bigger problems. His employer had found out about his financial schemes, the deals he had tried to bury, the numbers he had fudged. He was fired, blacklisted. His fiancée had cut him off completely, and word spread fast. He had nothing left. No job, no money, no relationship, no backup plan. Karma hit him harder than I ever could. One night, my phone rang again. This time, I answered. It was Logan. Drunk, pathetic, desperate. Nathan, he slurred, his voice thick with regret, pain, something else, fear. Man, I messed up. I know I did. But you didn't have to do this. I smirked, swirling the whiskey in my glass. Do what? Hold you accountable? Silence. Then, a broken laugh. You don't get it, do you? You think you won. But, he choked on his words, exhaling sharply. I lost everything, man. I leaned back, letting the moment stretch, letting him feel every second of it. Good, I said finally. Another pause. Then, quietly, are you ever gonna forgive me? I stared out the window, taking in the peaceful night, the city lights stretching into the distance, the world still turning even though mine had been shattered. Forgiveness? No, I said, my voice calm, steady. I don't think I will. And then, I hung up. And just like that, it was over. A week after everything imploded, the house felt different, quieter, lighter, like the weight of years of lies had finally lifted. Jessica was out of my life. Logan was drowning in his own self-destruction. And me? I was free. No more waiting for the other shoe to drop. No more questioning if the person I loved was being honest. It was over. But then, she showed up. It was late, nearly midnight, when I heard the knock at my door. At first, I ignored it, assuming it was some delivery mix-up or a neighbor needing something. But then it came again, louder, more desperate. I knew who it was before I even checked. I opened the door to find Jessica standing there, wrapped in a coat, her hair damp from the rain, her eyes red-rimmed like she had been crying for hours. For a brief second, I just stared at her, taking in the sight of the woman I had once loved, now nothing more than a stranger. What do you want? I asked, my voice flat, emotionless. She swallowed hard, her hands tightening into fists at her sides. I needed to see you. I leaned against the doorframe, exhaling slowly. Why? Haven't you done enough? Her face twisted, pain flashing in her eyes. Nathan, please. Just hear me out. I should have slammed the door in her face. I should have laughed and walked away. But some small, cruel part of me wanted to hear what she had to say, wanted to see her struggle to find an excuse for what she had done. So I stepped aside, motioning for her to come in. She hesitated, then walked past me, her presence filling the space that no longer belonged to her. She stood in the middle of the living room, looking around like she barely recognized the place. It feels different, she murmured. I crossed my arms. Yeah, it is. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Finally, she turned to face me, her eyes pleading. I messed up, she whispered. I know that. I ruined everything. But I need you to understand. I never wanted to hurt you. I laughed, cold, sharp, devoid of any humor. That's rich, Jessica. You didn't want to hurt me, but you lied to my face for years. You slept with my brother. You built a whole second life while I sat at home like a fool believing in you. Tears welled in her eyes. I was scared. I shook my head, stepping closer. No, you were selfish. You didn't care about me. You didn't care about Logan's fiancée. You only cared about what you wanted. And now that it's all blown up in your face, you're standing here trying to salvage what's left. She wiped at her face, her lip trembling. I loved you, Nathan. I still do. I inhaled deeply, letting her words sit between us for a moment. Then, slowly, I shook my head. No, you don't. You loved what I gave you. Stability, security, a safety net. But you never really loved me. She let out a broken sob, covering her mouth with her hands, her shoulders shaking. I don't know how to fix this, she choked out. I exhaled, my voice steady, unwavering. You can't. Her eyes snapped to mine, wide, desperate. Nathan, please. I cut her off with a shake of my head. You don't get to beg now. You made your choice. And I made mine. This is over, Jessica. For good. She took a shaky breath, nodding slowly like she was finally accepting the truth. I needed to say goodbye. I met her gaze, my expression unreadable. You already did. The moment you chose him, you said goodbye to us. Tears streamed down her face as she stepped toward the door, hesitating for just a second. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She walked out, closing the door softly behind her, and just like that, she was gone. For the first time in a long time, I felt nothing but peace. No anger, no regret, no sadness, just freedom. I poured myself a drink, sat back, and smiled. The past was over. And the future? It was mine. The moment Jessica walked out of my house for the last time, I exhaled, a long, slow breath that felt like it was carrying years of weight off my shoulders. No more lies. No more betrayal. No more her. I sat on the couch, staring at the front door, half expecting her to knock again, half expecting another desperate text. Another last-ditch attempt to cling to the pieces of the life she had destroyed. But my phone was silent. And for the first time in a long time, so was my mind. I poured myself a drink, the amber liquid swirling in the glass as I leaned back, letting the quiet sink in. It wasn't an empty quiet. It wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. The past had been burned to the ground, and now, there was only one thing left to do, move forward. The next morning, I woke up feeling different, lighter. I got up, stretched, made coffee without the usual fog clouding my brain. I had spent so much time thinking about what Jessica and Logan had done to me, about how to make them pay, about how to make sure they lost just as much as I had. But now, they weren't my problem anymore. Jessica had nothing left. Logan was still drowning in the mess he created. That was enough. I didn't need to keep checking my phone, waiting for updates on their downfall. I had my own life to rebuild. I went for a run, my feet hitting the pavement in a steady rhythm, my mind clear, my breathing even. The world felt bigger now, open in a way I hadn't noticed before. For the first time in years, I wasn't running from anything. I was running towards something. Halfway through my run, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I stopped at the edge of a park, pulling it out, expecting another desperate text from Jessica or a pathetic attempt from Logan to explain himself. But it wasn't them. It was Lisa. I smirked, swiping to read her message. So, does the newly single man want to grab a drink tonight? Or is he too busy being mysterious and brooding? I chuckled, shaking my head. Lisa had been the one person who had seen me through this mess without judgment, without pity. She had been betrayed just like I had, and in some strange way, that made her the only person who truly understood what it felt like. She knew what it was like to have your world ripped apart. But unlike Jessica, unlike Logan, she was real. She wasn't a liar. She wasn't playing games. I typed back, mysterious and brooding is exhausting. A drink sounds better. Her reply came seconds later. Good. Tonight. My place. Bring whiskey. I pocketed my phone, my smirk growing. For the first time in a long time, I was actually looking forward to something. That night, I stood in front of Lisa's apartment, whiskey in hand, feeling something unfamiliar, excitement. Not the kind that came from revenge, not the satisfaction of watching someone else suffer, but something real, something simple. I knocked, and she answered almost immediately, grinning as she stepped aside to let me in. You actually showed up, she teased, crossing her arms. I was half expecting some dramatic last-minute cancellation. I shrugged, stepping inside, setting the bottle on the counter. What can I say? You're persistent. She laughed, grabbing 2 glasses, pouring a drink for both of us. Damn right I am. She handed me a glass, clinking it against mine. To fresh starts? I hesitated for a second, then nodded. To fresh starts. We drank, and for the first time in forever, I wasn't thinking about the past. I woke up the next morning with no regrets, no anger, no lingering bitterness, just a strange, unfamiliar peace settling into my bones. It was over. The war, the betrayal, the need for revenge, all of it buried in the past where it belonged. Jessica was gone. Logan was ruined. And me? I was free. The feeling was strange, almost unsettling, after spending so long living under the weight of their lies, but I wasn't about to question it. This was what moving on felt like. I stretched, inhaled deeply, and smiled to myself. No more looking back. The day passed in a blur of normalcy. No calls, no texts, no reminders of what had been. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't lonely. It was just quiet, and I liked it. I spent the afternoon cleaning out the last remnants of my old life. Jessica's leftover clothes, the framed photos, the little reminders of what I thought we had. One by one, I tossed them into a box, sealed it shut, and set it by the door. Tomorrow, I'd donate it. Erase the last traces of her from this house. That night, Lisa called. "You up for another drink?" she asked, her voice casual, teasing. I chuckled, leaning against the counter. "You trying to make this a habit?" She laughed. "Maybe. You coming, or what?" I glanced at the whiskey bottle on my shelf, then at the empty space in my living room where Jessica's things used to be. I didn't owe her grief anymore. I didn't owe Logan hatred. I didn't owe the past anything. I grabbed my keys. Be there in 10. Lisa's place was warm, cozy, nothing like the sterile, curated life Jessica had tried to create. She met me at the door, already holding 2 glasses. "Look at you, actually following through on plans. Growth." I smirked, stepping inside. "Maybe I just wanted free whiskey." She rolled her eyes, handing me a glass. "Uh-huh. Sure." We sat on her couch, drinking, laughing, talking about everything and nothing. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what had been stolen from me. I was just here, in the moment, and it felt good. At some point, the conversation turned more serious. "So," Lisa said, swirling the last of her drink, "now that your grand revenge mission is over, what's next?" I exhaled, staring at my glass, really thinking about it. "I don't know," I admitted. "For the first time in years, I don't have a plan. No one to fight, nothing to prove. Just me." She tilted her head, studying me. "That's kind of exciting, isn't it?" I nodded slowly. Yeah, it is." A comfortable silence stretched between us. Then, she smirked. "You know, I was half expecting you to go full villain after everything. Burn their lives to the ground and disappear into the night." I laughed, shaking my head. "Oh, I thought about it." She grinned. "I bet you did." We sat there for a moment, the weight of everything behind us, nothing but possibilities ahead. "You ever think about leaving?" she asked suddenly. "Starting over somewhere new?" I raised an eyebrow. "Like moving?" She nodded. "Yeah. No more reminders of them. No more running into old ghosts. Just fresh air, a new city, a clean slate." I thought about it, rolling the idea around in my head. A fresh start. A place where no one knew my past. Where I wasn't the guy who got betrayed. The guy who had to pick up the pieces. Just a new life. I set my glass down, locking eyes with her. "That actually sounds perfect." Lisa smiled. "Good. Because I've been thinking the same thing." And just like that, the decision was made. We weren't running from the past. We were walking straight into the future. Together.